Welcome to Baby Boomer Tales. My name's Jim. Thank you for riding along today. You can find us at babyboomertales.com. Once you've landed on our webpage, you can visit our Boomers General Store. There are links to our podcast right there on our website. Places like YouTube, Spotify, X, or Twitter you may know it as, and a lot of others. Our unusual fact this week are about things you can do when you turn 18. They may not be unusual to you. If you're 17 and you're going to turn 18, some of these are kind of unusual for them. You can vote. You can buy a lottery ticket. You can get a tattoo without your parents' permission. Most states you can purchase fireworks. Some you don't need to be 18 to have that happen. You can bet on a horse race. You have to go to jury duty if they call you. You can buy spray paint and cough syrup when you turn 18. Amazing. You can join the military without your parents' permission once you turn 18. You can apply for a credit card. Oop, that'll get you in trouble. Or open a bank account. Buy a car. You can get married without parent consent when you're 18. You can adopt a child. That one blew me away right there. An 18-year-old can adopt a child. You can book a hotel room, donate blood, become an Uber driver. Yeah, there you go. You can adopt a dog once you turn 18. You can rent an apartment or buy a house. You can pawn your belongings, which you may have to do once you get that credit card. And the most important one, I'm sure, once you turn 18 without your parents' permission, you can get plastic surgery. Song of the week is Peaceful Easy Feeling by Eagles. It was the band's third single off their debut album, Eagles, in 1972. This great song reached number 22 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts. Peaceful Easy Feeling was written by Jack Tempchin, and the lead singer was Glenn Frey of the Eagles. Tempchin saw a girl in a park with turquoise earrings against her dark skin. That kind of inspired this great song. He said, "I wanted to put into words about the beauty I saw in every girl, and I want to sleep with you in the desert tonight with a billion stars all around." When I turned 18 was right before I graduated from high school, like a week or two before I graduated from high school. So, true to form, I thought I was all grown up and I knew more than my parents, of course. And I took off thinking I would take a year off before I had to go to school, settle down, get serious, all that stuff. And I hitchhiked to New Orleans with the full intent of catching a job on some kind of a merchant ship and go to Norway and see this girl that I kind of knew. Yeah, I was all grown up. That was quite the plan, right? Well, I never did get a job on a merchant ship, but I did hitchhike around the United States, all over the place, from sea to shining sea, from the northern part of the United States to the southern part, almost every state. Some of my most memorable experiences in these travels were in California, Florida, Texas, and Massachusetts. California, I had a huge wake-up call from seeing drag queens on Sunset Strip to who I thought was Timothy Leary on Laguna Beach. I do believe that California may be the prettiest state in the continental United States, the lower 48. And it is a tragedy about those fires. And we had fires back in my home county just a few years ago. And I've never had to experience any of that except for what I read on the internet and maybe see on the TV. But California had those California girls. And that may explain that state better than any song they ever made. Better than Ventura Highway. Better than Jack and Diane. Better than Hotel California, that's a fact. In Florida, I got to just sit and watch these world-class surfers that I knew they were friends of mine hit the waves after we traveled halfway across the United States together. They were going from California to Florida, and I just happened to get picked up by them in San Antonio, Texas. Speaking of Texas, that's where I first was introduced to marijuana, first got high there. Now, if I had to do it over again, I don't think I may have done that, knowing what I know today. But it did, in a sense, change my life and set me on a course that perhaps my life would be totally different today. I wouldn't have met my wife. I wouldn't have the life I had. I don't know. Who knows these things? I'm not a big believer in like the Matrix, although I used to trip out on that. Probably my most memorable experience on my travels in Texas was in El Paso, Texas, a place where I probably could have got killed, and maybe God's angels were watching out over me right then and there, but I didn't know it at the time. And Massachusetts, I actually lived up there for about 6 months. It was so different than anything I was ever used to. I lived right in the middle of all the Harvard, Cambridge stuff, and perhaps I would have even stayed there. Except this old Colorado boy, when winter came and was upon that great state, it was so cold. Talking about somebody that used to live in a place where it reached 50 below zero. But there was a difference. Back home in north central Colorado Rocky Mountains, 50 below zero was very, very dry, no matter how much snow there was. In Boston, Massachusetts, it was so humid it would just come after you through the walls. You could not get away from the cold. I ended up going back to California from Massachusetts just to try to thaw out. Well, through all that stuff, I experienced the peace-love movement, and it really wasn't what I thought it would be. I saw the dark side of drugs like I don't wish on anybody. I am so fortunate, though, that I lived through it, and I don't know, it didn't really affect me like it could have. Although some of that stuff stuck around with me. One was the result of a bad LSD trip that was really lasted with me for years. And perhaps if I wouldn't have met my friend Jesus, I never would have shook that. But I'm all well now and have been for a very, very long time. So I'll never be a proponent of any kind of drugs whatsoever. They used to preach this to me before I ever even had seen drugs, that marijuana will lead to heroin. Well, I see how that can happen. I do. Well, through all that, somehow, against my will even, I ended up back home in that little northern Colorado town. 500 people, 8,000 feet above sea level. The home of my fathers and my mothers. And I spent probably the next 17 years there. I worked for the town for a while, for old Bud, and that was a wonderful experience and learned the skills that I probably never would have received anywhere else. Driving heavy equipment and all the stuff that goes with maintaining a town. And then I moved to the Jap camp, a bunch of old buildings that some Japanese farmers had lived in. And when World War II came upon the United States, we sent all those Japanese off to internment camps, and the place had sat empty for 30 years or something. And along comes a bunch of us, and we fixed it up and lived there. Hardly any electricity and no running water. And overall, it was a very good experience. while living there at the Jap camp, which was about 10 miles from my home. A situation came into that county called the Rainbow Family's annual festival, and they chose to have it up there, up in my old home county. It's full of lakes and mountains, the prettiest place you ever wanted to see, really. And that was like an invasion upon my home, and it affected so many of us. But we all lived through it. We did. Later I went to work building a dam high above this little town up there. To get to work, you just climb and climb in the mountains. Finally you get there. And I worked there for about a year, and it was a very good job. And that morphed into me going to work at the opposite end of things in a mine. But where my job there at the mine was in the mill where all the ore and dirt and all that stuff that they took out of that mine went. They separated the ores and the precious metals and all that from the dirt and the sand and the sludge. And then I got a job there at that mine on the tailings pond, which after the mill, they pumped all this stuff in kind of a slurry up the mountains even further and made a huge lake out of this slurry. And they built it up and built it up. And that was a wonderful blue-collar job. It was. If that particular mine wouldn't have shut down, I would have retired from there. But as it was, there's a mine that had just opened right next door and was offered to keep my job, but I had to go in the mine. And so I did, where I have a lot of friends that actually did retire from there. And that is where, as I was working there during that time frame, I met the girl that I would eventually marry. Now, through this era of my life, from the age of 18 until 25, I had thought I was in love 2 different times. I really did. I think I had a brush with love both times. And looking back and seeing where I am today and being married for 47 years, I don't think I knew what love was. But because of those 2 young ladies, it prepared me, and I'll be forever thankful for that. It prepared me to be the man that I was when I met Kim. Now, 2 weeks ago, we had volume 3 of this series. I'm doing volume 2 today. In a couple of weeks, we'll do volume 1 from the time I was born until I was 17, approaching 18. And then when we finish up this series, volume 4 will be from the time that I was 50 until today. You may wonder why I'm bouncing around and not doing 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that is all by design. When this thing's all over, I hope that I've accomplished what I set out to do. For several years now, have you ever seen that thing where in schools or businesses, they tell you to write your obituary, your own obituary, as if you had died and someone was writing it for you, but you were writing your own, to kind of see a microcosm and a snapshot of your life. Well, I've wanted to do that, and it's been on my list of podcast ideas for years, but I feel like I can't do it because I'll be saying, I'm going to croak. I don't know. I'm a firm believer on the power of your words. So looking back at this series, these 4 episodes that I am bouncing around on, I think that could replace that sitting down and writing your own obituary. I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. If you do that, I think it might be a wonderful exercise. But whatever. Always try to be kind, no matter what's happening around you. I'll be back next week. Thank you for listening today. Peace out.